on a dreary day. I'm glad to have you in our studios here. Where am I? I'm in the Heyburn Building, the historic Heyburn Building here at 4th and Broadway. We're up on the 8th floor. We always have been. And we broadcast with an antenna that is on the roof of this building. This building is what, like 16 floors tall? So we are a low power FM station as opposed to the vast majority of stations on your dial, which are full power. They have a license from the FCC that allows them to produce to broadcast at, I don't know, X amount of watts that allows them to reach farther. So how far an FM radio signal reaches depends on the power, the wattage, plus the height of the antenna. Those two things give you how far it's going to reach, the power of the signal altogether, and then whether you get static on your radio or not. So we have the advantage of being really tall. We have a really high antenna here, and it's because of that, even though we only broadcast at like 20 watts, like it's like a light bulb, you guys. But even though it's not a ton of wattage, we're able to reach most of Jefferson County. There are parts where it's tough, and it depends on the topography too. That's the neat thing about radio. You're not broadcasting to a flat plain, so there are occasionally tall buildings, but more likely hills and things like that, and valleys that will interrupt your whether you can receive it or not. So most of Jefferson County and across the river and into southern Indiana is where our FM signal goes, and that is controlled by the Federal Communications Corporation. The FCC provides the guidance about and the policies about what stations can do, how much power they can broadcast, and where their antenna can be, because you don't want interference. So the FCC is like overseeing this public resource, your airwaves, the FM signal. There's only so much bandwidth that a radio can pick up. And if we didn't have government control, FCC, which I'm not the hugest fan of FCC, right? Like they're not the best, but if we didn't have an FCC, it would be the Wild West. You would turn on your radio in one part of the town and you get whatever station was blasting out the most wattage, and you'd go to another part of town. The same, 106.5 would then be blocked out by somebody else. So because of that control and the FCC watching out for us, we're able to reserve our space on the bandwidth so that in the same place in Louisville, you should be able to get our signal every day. Now, it also depends a little bit on the weather and the wind. You can really get right down to it. But generally, we have a broadcast area. You can see the map of that at forwardradio.org. You can see our service area. But in this day and age, radio has changed a lot, and a lot of people are no longer listening on actual radios, or the only time they listen on a radio is when they're in their vehicle, right? And vehicles move. So it's not, you're not going to get the same experience anywhere, right? If you drive too far away, you'll suddenly lose the signal. But we've had some fantastic reports of how far the forward radio signal can get. People have said they're driving out to Frankfurt, they're able to pick it up almost all the way, which is pretty damn cool. So there may be more than 300,000 people living in our actual service area versus our theoretical one, right? But yeah, most people these days are listening to radio and all kinds of audio through the internet, either, like I said at the start, either through our live stream, which is exactly the same as what's going out of our FM signal. It's just channeled through the internet, or via podcasts, which is really exploded. And of course, we podcast too here at Forward Radio, but there are licensing issues associated with all of this. So we have a license, we pay license to BMI and ASCAP for the right to broadcast copyrighted material. So, whether it's the latest Beyonce or a Beatles song, all of it is copyright protected, and you're not allowed to broadcast those any of that copyrighted material unless you have a license to do so. And when you have a license to do so, that means you also have to report the songs you play so that the artists can get royalties. This starts to be a challenge for our programmers to keep track of all the music they use. But we're not primarily a music station, so we have less of these issues. Our sister station, Art FM, I think it's 97.1, WXOX, they do a lot of music. In fact, they're primarily a music station. And actually, they're just a few blocks away on Breckenridge Street. Ruth, did you want to jump in with something?
Yes, because I was driving just last night in my car and and no, I think it was deliberate. I went to check some of the other frequencies and I checked 100.9, which is the previous Crescent Hill radio.
Oh yeah.
And I heard you are listening to WXOX. So now I think that WXOX has two
Is
frequencies,
that right?
yes, 97.1 and
Cool.
100.9. Just want to bring
Cool.
that up.
So
Go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. So Louisville has two community radio stations. We're one of them, and WXOX or Art FM is the other one. We used to have three. We had something that started out as called Crescent Hill Radio, and then they wanted to expand their reach and not just be in Crescent Hill, and they moved to a new location on Melwood, and had their own little house. It was really cool studios, and they changed their name to WCHQ. But anyway, they ran out of funding, unfortunately, weren't able to make it. They were all only local music. It was a really wonderful station. We were able to rescue one DJ from that station or two DJs from one show. So we're really happy to have Lonnie Griesbaum and Rip Reinhardt on our station now. And they do a show called Backtracks. And you may also know Rip Reinhardt from our public radio station here in town. He's they don't call him a DJ. He's a host on WFPL from time to time too. So anyway, but yeah, we have a handful of music shows, and we would welcome more, especially music shows that were about highlighting our local music here in the Louisville area and the region. We just added one actually that is a show produced out of Lexington, and it's started out on a station there, and it's a show that is recordings of live performances of local music. And it's called Overtones Live, and it's just in its third week on our station. We're just delighted to have it to be featuring some local musicians as well. But the main mission of our station, and the reason we're talking about it today on Green Drinks, is really about social justice and progressive issues and sustainability, and creating a community conversation and dialogue, and sharing information and news with the community that they're not going to get anywhere else on the mainstream radio dial. And I would say that even includes our wonderful public radio stations in town. We are hyper focused on local, but we're also part of a national network called the Pacifica Network, which started in the 30s, 40s out in California, a network of community radio stations that has grown over the years and is now a national network of stations. And so we are able to access, because of our membership in that network, all of this great national programming. So Pacifica Network brings you things like Democracy Now! It's a daily show. Other shows that we have daily on our station from them include Letters of Politics and Rising Up with Sonali and The Attitude with Arnie Arneson. But they also produce some wonderful weekly programs that we'll broadcast on our station. All kinds of shows, alternative radio. I want to share a few highlights from our broadcast schedule that I know this audience will be particularly interested in. So in terms of Pacifica programming of interest to sustainability folks, that we broadcast a show called Radio Eco Shock, which provides latest science, interviews with authors and issues about climate change, oceans, forests, pollution, peak oil, economy, and peace. Hosted by Alex Smith since 2006. And he is a homesteader, used to work as a researcher for a global environmental group and a private investigator. It's a great show. We recently added another Pacifica program on that's only a half hour. It's a lot of fun. It's called Reverend Billy Radio. And Reverend Billy is Billy Talon from New York City. He began his ministry 20 years ago when he founded the funny but very serious Church of Stop Shopping. So they are all about reducing excessive consumption in America. We have the Ralph Nader Radio Hour. You all know Ralph Nader. He ran for president several times. Man, what an incredible longtime advocate for consumer protection, humanitarianism, environmentalism, democratic government. That is a fantastic program that's continues and it's on our station. Another half-hour show is called Sea Change Radio, covering the shifts to social, environmental, and economic sustainability with Alex Wise. We have a program called Citizens Climate Radio, which is produced once a month. It's a 30-minute show produced by or hosted by Citizens Climate Lobby, and we actually have a chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby here in Louisville. Economic Update is another great one for the economic side of sustainability, hosted by Richard Wolf and produced by a great organization called Democracy at Work, which is a nonprofit that advocates for worker co-ops and democratic workplaces as a key path to a stronger, more democratic economic system. And another one that we added recently, when is the Ralph Nader Radio Hour? Yes, it's Sundays at 3, Mondays at midnight, 12 a.m. And 1 p.m. So several of our shows broadcast multiple times throughout the week because we have enough room on our broadcast schedule. We're 24/7, and we don't have as many local programmers as we'd like. So we actually repeat most of our local shows 3 times and even some of these national programs 3 times. And you can find our broadcast schedule, which is always evolving, so it's not set in stone forever. So any air times I mentioned today may change, but you can find that at forwardradio.org too. And then Food Sleuth Radio is the last one I'll mention from Pacifica. It's a half-hour show that we added recently, interviewing the nation's leading experts on food, health, and agriculture. So that's some of the national stuff that we broadcast. In terms of national scene, we also do fun things like cover election night coverage. So we often partner with Democracy Now! On that, who does great election night coverage. But sometimes I've done it as a local host. I've been in studio on election night, keeping up with the local Louisville and Kentucky results as they come in, and we'll broadcast those live on election night too. We broadcast the inauguration live on our station, for instance. So sometimes we break in with some of that national programming. We're not here 24/7, like I said, so we're not like, oh my God, there's a national story we got to break in with. It doesn't work like that, but if it's like something like an inauguration or election that we can plan for in advance, we often will do a break in. And then, the reason we're here is for the local programming. We're here to give Louisvillians a voice, to amplify the voices that already exist in our community. We know that people like you have messages they want to get out to their community, and have projects they're working on, have organizations like the Louisville Sustainability Council that they want to highlight and support. And so that's why we created this station, is to get those voices amplified and out there and broadcast to people who may have never even heard of the Louisville Sustainability Council. What's that? It's probably not covered on WDRB too often, right? Or even WFPL, God bless them, right? So if you want to find what's going on in terms of grassroots activism and communities that aren't getting covered, whether they're neighborhoods that aren't getting covered, or whether they're like groups of people who don't get enough attention in our media and tend to be sidelined, this is the station to listen to them. Now, if you want to hear great local music, you probably got to go to Art FM, and we love them and we support them. But if and we'd love to do more local music on this station too, if we had volunteers willing to host it. But if you want to get in touch with what's going on in terms of grassroots news and activism here in Louisville, this is your station, and that's why we're talking about it today. So what do we produce locally that's especially relevant to you all? We have a daily show at 7 p.m. with Hart Hagen. Some of you may know Hart. He does a daily show called The Climate Report, all about what climate change will bring and what we can do to respond positively to climate change in all of the many different facets, economic, environmental, social. I do a weekly program called Sustainability Now. It premieres Mondays at 6 p.m. and then it repeats at midnight and 10 a.m. Tuesday, where I do long form interviews with people like you in the community who are doing great work in sustainability. And we just have a wonderful conversation. It's so great for me to be able to sit down with people I admire or people I've never heard of before, but they're doing really cool things, and just hear what they do and why. And sometimes the excuse is there's a big event coming up or a new program they want to promote, but sometimes it's just catching up with folks and organizations. And so that's what we do for 45 minutes. And then I do a 15-minute community calendar every week. So if you want to know what's happening this week in sustainability related, whether it's green drinks, I always talk about green drinks, or anything else in our community, service opportunities, other public programs of all kinds. You're going to hear about it on the community calendar on Sustainability Now. So tune in, and if you've got an event you want to announce, you can shoot it to me via email, justin.mogg@louisville.edu, and I'll get it on my calendar. We also have a show just about science, which is so cool. Science does not get enough coverage in our media, or if it does, it gets a really, glossy coverage. They don't go into any kind of details and generally don't talk to actual scientists. They might talk about a journalist who interviewed a scientist, right? But to actually hear directly from scientists, you can tune into our show called Bench Talk, the Week in Science, with Dr. Dave Robinson, who is a professor at Bellarmine, and he has all kinds of great people on that show talking about everything you can imagine in science, right? And usually how it relates to issues of the day, whether it's COVID or nuclear war or all kinds of stuff, right? So check out Bench Talk, the Week in Science. We have a show called Solutions to Violence, that is, really rooted in the original organization that started this station, which is Fellowship of Reconciliation, the Louisville chapter. This station was born out of the FOR. That's why we're FOR Word Radio, because they wanted to do a new media project. They knew that, they've been producing this newspaper called Forsooth every month for I don't know, decades in Louisville. It's a great newspaper, but they saw print media going the way of the dodo, and wanted to try out a new they still do an online version of the paper, by the way, but they wanted to try new media, and so they launched this effort to start a community radio station here in Louisville that is now Forward Radio. So Solutions to Violence is focused on solving conflict without violence, and that is so vital to sustainability. We're always going to have conflict, and if we're just going to spend lots of money and time on war, then we're not going to get anywhere. We have a weekly community conversation that I co-host called Truth to Power, which we call it the Truth to Power Happy Hour. We record it on Fridays after work, and it airs then Friday at 9 p.m. and repeats throughout the weekend. And that show is open to anybody to join us for just, decompressing after the week. What's your reflections on the news? But we often have special guests too. And this week, I want you to tune in Friday at 9. We're going to be getting a live report from the field. And this is the power of community radio, from folks from Kentucky, from Extinction Rebellion Kentucky, who've gone up to Minnesota to stand in solidarity with the water keepers who are resisting the Enbridge Line 3 build out, part of the broader petrochemical build out that Extinction Rebellion has been rebelling against. And so we're going to be interviewing folks and having conversation with folks who are up there in Minnesota right now with the water protectors. So that kind of stuff gets covered on Truth to Power. 3 more, and then I'll stop talking about our shows. On the Edge with K.A. Owens. If you don't know K.A. Owens, what an amazing community advocate. Man, he's everywhere I go, I see K.A. Owens. He is a fantastic social justice advocate. He talks about, it's a half-hour show where he's talking about public affairs, politics, economics, military affairs, you name it. We also have a show just about single-payer healthcare and why we need it, called Single Payer Radio, with Mark McKinley. That's every Monday at 2 p.m., Tuesday at 7 a.m., and Wednesday at 11 a.m. with Kentuckians for Single Payer Healthcare, which is one of our community partners. They chip in some money to help fund this station. We love having nonprofits sponsor our station, and in exchange, you get 30-second promos aired on our station throughout the week. Local businesses could do it too as underwriters. We've never had any success with that yet, but it just takes volunteers hitting them up until we finally find one. We're going to get one soon. I just know it. And then a fairly new program on our station is called We and You, with Brittany and Terrence from the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, which is also right here in the Heyburn Building. They just come down the stairs and do a show every week on civil rights, social justice, and the impacts of a more equitable state. So check out We and You. The last show I really want to mention is our access hour. And this is where you all can come in. So a fantastic thing about Forward Radio is that you can get on our airwaves without having any experience in radio, without even necessarily wanting to commit to a weekly show, or with that, maybe you don't want to be interviewed by somebody, you don't want to be a guest on somebody else's show, you want to do your own show about whatever issue you're passionate about, or again, community you feel is undercovered, even on our station, right? We admit we're not covering it all. So we'd love to have any of you sign up to do an access hour on our station. And what that means is that you'd get connected with someone like me. You'd come into our studio, or if you don't want to do that because of COVID, we can do it all virtually, however you want to do it. And record an hour-long program with us, and we'll walk you through like how to structure it and all that kind of stuff. You could be interviewing somebody or having a conversation with somebody, or you could do it all on your own. You can mix in music, however you want to do it. It would be your hour, and that airs on our station. That little access hour slot is on our station every Wednesday at 2, Thursday at 11, and Friday at 1. So if you recorded an access hour with us, it would air 3 times on our station, and we'd post it as a podcast so you could share it with all your friends. We do not get enough people hitting us up for access hours. I wish it happened more frequently. Even though I'm way too busy and don't have the time, I would love to take some time to help somebody do an access hour. And of course, that's the way you get hooked on it, and you realize, oh, I'd really like to do this more than just once. And so, yeah, you can go to forwardradio.org right now and fill out a little form and let us know, I want to do an access hour on salamanders. Oh, we would love that. Right? Whatever you're passionate about it, or something you want to do a little research on and share with our community, or something you already are way down in the weeds about and know, oh man, we'd love to do that. Or maybe it's more than salamanders. You want to do a show on, I don't know, restoring ecosystems. And we would love to get you going with a weekly or maybe even a monthly, if you had to do it just monthly kind of program. Could be a half an hour, it could be an hour long. We'd love to have that. So go to forwardradio.org, think about it, and we will hold your hand and walk you through it. And then you will have this space on our airwaves that you can own. So should I take a pause and answer questions? Or Ruth, did you want to respond to anything I said?
I would just like to make a play for the notion that so much of what we put on our airwaves are personal experiences. It's not just, although we do have experts, we also have people who have regular weekly shows who are just talking about their own personal experiences. Like, for example, Depth and Weight, where we've got 2 people who are former drug addicts.
Oh my gosh,
who
yeah.
talk about drug addiction and alcohol addiction, and they bring guests on and they speak from the heart.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. And we have another show, Perks of Being a Book Lover. And in that show, it's not authors of books normally. It's these 2 women who love to read and love to talk about the books that they're reading. And they do interview authors every so often, but they mostly interview people in other book clubs. Or Two Nuts in a Pod. That's another really great show.
I love Nuts in a Pod. So that kind of like Depth and Weight, a similar theme. Like, how cool is that? We invite into our studios 2 people who admit they have mental health issues, and they are not just going to admit it, they're going to spend an hour talking about mental health. Where else on your radio dial or anywhere in the media you're going to get that? Like, that is so cool. And that's an example of a show that actually started out as just a podcast, right? Lots of people are doing their own podcast thing right now, but they heard about our community radio station, wanted to enhance and expand their reach and join a community of fellow podcasters and broadcasters to learn from and be in community with. It's, that's the podcasting is so isolating. Like, you're in your little basement or studio or whatever at home, and like, yeah, you get to talk to people, but we have a community here at Forward Radio, and it's through having a station and a community of like random people. Somebody who's interested in mental health, somebody's interested in sustainability. That's where community magic happens, right? That's what's so exciting about it, is those sparks that cross between people when you have something like a community radio station. And it's why I value this station so much, even though I recognize that FM radio is not something that if you want to reach, millions of people, you're not going to do it with FM radio. But that's not the point for me. The point is about building community. And we can use the internet to reach people through our station too. So lots of cool ways to engage people. Any other questions or thoughts? I can give a little bit of a studio tour. I'm not on a mobile device, so I've got this our studio Mac that I can use. But let me just show you around. It's not a huge space, so it's not super COVID friendly, unfortunately. But we're able to do socially distanced interviews even in this studio, and folks have come in with masks, and you could still interview people that are 6 feet apart. So I'll just do like a little spin around here, and so this is our host microphone, right, and our board through which all the microphones and the audio runs. Over there is what's actually running the station, and that's our automation computer that is hardwired out to the antenna on the roof. This is just where people sit when they're being interviewed on any of our 3 microphones, and that's literally the door out. So that's about our studio, which, if we had tens of thousands of dollars coming in every month, we could have our own space. Like Art FM has an incredible building, and like I was mentioning, Crescent Hill Radio used to as well. So that's all about like money, right? Like we only are able to afford a small space in the Heyburn Building. We'd love to expand. We'd love to have a second studio, a production studio, a place maybe where the phone could be, so that if we're in here live broadcasting, the phone wouldn't go off. But we don't have the funds yet, so we're still sort of in the building stage, even though we are coming up on our 4th anniversary of broadcasting to the Louisville community. This station has a rich history already. The reason I am involved in Forward Radio is because of my partner here, Ruth. Ruth did a presentation on this idea of having a community radio station, and I got so jazzed about it that even though I was like, oh, there's no way I have time to do that, I ended up getting involved. It took me a little while. Ruth, when did you start getting involved in the station?
Well, that's a very amorphous question because, I mean, we had this dream for years before it actually ever materialized.
Okay. Yeah.
But I was in a group of people who were involved in media reform, and that's how the whole thing got started. Going to these conferences, these national conferences of media reform, and finding stuff out that was so exciting. There's bad news that you hear every day, but
Yeah.
you go to some of these conferences and it's really exciting innovation and just all kinds of potential. And we would come home and we would talk about media reform and getting our own radio station. And then a window of opportunity presented itself with the FCC, and we grabbed it. And I would say that we worked on it for at least a couple of years before we actually got our license. We worked on applying for it, raising money for it, all the things that have to be done.
Yeah. And I was in on some of that maybe for 6 months, probably not a full year before we went on air. And I was brought in because I was one of the few people involved or interested who actually had radio experience. and I've never created a radio station, but I've jumped in and been broadcasting, like I said, since I started in college and community radio in Oberlin, in Ohio, in 1993. And I started not by being a music DJ like a lot of people do in college, but by doing a talk radio show on the environment, because I was an environmental studies major and I was really interested in that. And what I actually did was I joined on as a co-host with 2 community members, some older guys who had been doing the show for years and wanted some, young blood in there. And eventually, like, they kind of faded away, and it became like I was doing it myself every week. But I loved it, and it really got me hooked. And then I started doing world music DJing too at Oberlin, learned all about world music, which was mind-blowingly fantastic, because that's a station with a huge music library. Like, CDs and records. Now everything's digital. You can get any kind of music anywhere, but in those days you had to actually have a collection, right? And so that's how I was exposed to that. And then I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, which has one of the best community radio stations in the country, WORT. And they have been on the air since 1975, I think. Like incredible history, and not like our station. There was I showed up in Madison and I'm like, oh, I've been a DJ for 4 years. Like I can do this. So I like put in my little request to get a show, and they're like, yeah, good luck, buddy. Our airways are totally full. Like their broadcast schedule was completely full. So the only thing I could do again was join another show. So I joined a show that covered world news in the global South, and I did that for a decade. And then I went off to the Peace Corps and didn't plan on it, but ended up finding little community radio stations down in Paraguay in South America, and ended up doing a weekly kind of a weekly show about what we were trying to promote in person, right? Whether it was nutrition or gardening or sanitation or alternative crops, or how to raise your chickens. Like, and my wife and I would do this funny show and sing in the native language of Guarani. We'd make up these songs about all these things. It was a lot of fun. And boy, when we'd go visit people later, they would always bring it up. Oh, you guys were talking on the radio about this great recipe. We tried it. I was like, whoa, really? That's so cool. So it was kind of sad to get to Louisville and there to not be any community radio stations. I guess Crescent Hill Radio may have existed. Honestly, wasn't too aware of it. But Art FM didn't even exist when I came here in 2009. So I missed it for a long time, but I also kind of was like, well, my life is so full. How could I possibly add this back? But then when this opportunity came up, I just couldn't resist because I enjoy doing radio so much. So please sing to us again. Wallace. Oh, you devil. Geez, I don't have the lyrics in front of me. Am I going to remember? Okay, I'll do it. This is a song in Guarani about raising chickens. She ruguasu, a preparande hambiu. I'll stop there. It's all in Guarani. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Is that to "Oh Christmas Tree"?
Yeah. we would take whatever silly melody we already had in our heads. Sometimes it was like Madonna songs or whatever. We should get out our notes, and Amanda and I should do a reprieve for you all.
This is also Justin.
Right. Oh my gosh. So how do you think the Ford radio could get better known? Well, that's a matter of advertising. So the only way you get eyes or ears on anything is to advertise it, right? And none of us are advertisers. None of us are marketing people. Like, we don't know what we're doing. We've had a few people involved in the station who are a little more like professional in the marketing realm, and they've helped us out a little bit. And we've had students from U of L help us out. This logo design, for instance, was created by students in a class that does graphic design. So we have some nice graphic design, but we don't have a big budget for marketing, right? Like, it takes money to do all that advertising. And it's never something we've really been able to afford. So then it just comes down to like individuals volunteering their time to either promote something on social media, that kind of marketing, or in-person marketing pre-COVID, right? Like, we enjoy getting out in the community at festivals. We certainly, when we were brand new, we did a lot of tabling at events like World Fest and Smoketown Get Down, and gosh, what else, Ruth? Lots of other big events like that. We would just have a table and a booth and try to get people aware, and we'd hand out our broadcast schedules. And sometimes we tried to set up a little recording booth there too, and have people tell us their stories, like at the Smoketown Get Down. Tell us your story about Smoketown. That never worked. I don't know why. But we do get out in the community still, and cover some things. I love to do that. I love to bring a little recording device out to rallies and things like that, and just get some of that audio of what it was like to be on the ground there. And we've even done some live broadcasts from those kinds of events. Some of the big 350 events, we were out there on the streets doing some live interviews and things like that. We have the capacity to do that as a station. We could either choose to do live radio or automated. As if you tune in right now, the computer I just showed you is running the station, and that's the way it works most of the time. People pre-produce their shows. And a lot of them even are pre-producing at home, which isn't that hard to do, especially if you've got a quiet place. If you got a home full of children and pets, it's a little hard. But if you got a quiet place in your home, and a fairly professional microphone, which there's, not too expensive, you can get USB plug-in microphones. You could produce some pretty high quality audio even at home. But however people do it, there is free software to edit. We use GarageBand or Audacity, are two free software that you can download on your computer right now to do basic audio editing and more advanced audio editing. I mean, you can, especially with Audacity, it's got all these kinds of effects. You can change the tempo. If you record your show that's supposed to be an hour and it's an hour and 5 minutes, you can compress the tempo, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, there's all these tools that are free. There's more professional tools you can buy too, of course. If we had a big budget, we would maybe use some of those tools as well, but we don't. We're on a shoestring here. So we're using all free stuff mostly for people to produce their shows at home or in the studio, and then they just upload it to the cloud and they manage their folder in Dropbox. And that's what the automation looks at. It's basically an hour-long playlist, and we tell it to, at the top of the hour, play a station ID and then play Sustainability Now. And it looks in the folder for whatever file I've uploaded that week. And the cool thing about that too is people can go on vacation. So you can pre-produce or play a bunch of best ofs. If you don't have a community calendar that's going to be outdated immediately, like me, you can produce some best of shows and fill up your folder with those, and people will hear a mix of those at random on those air times while you're on hiatus or on vacation. So it's a flexible medium, and it's really easy for people to fit it into their lives. Whereas live radio, if you got to be there every Monday at 8 a.m., that can be a bit hard. It can be hard on you. It can be hard to find guests who are willing to be there on Monday at 8 a.m. or whatever it is, right? So being able to have the flexibility of producing whenever and then having an automated station is really a wonderful luxury, because I grew up only doing live radio. I've never done this pre-recorded automated stuff until I got to Ford radios. So that used to be my rhythm and my habit. Was I had to cover that airtime every week. I had to show up at the station, and that's magical too. Like, fun things happen when you're doing live radio. And I enjoy live radio. In some ways, it's actually less work because there's no post-production. You just do what happens in the hour and you're done. Whereas when you're pre-producing something, you can get really obsessive about cutting out every single pause and going back in to get it exactly the right time and all that. So in a way, it can be more work to do pre-produce, but that's all on you. That's how professional you want to be about it. Call in. Oh, Jackie Green wants to know about call-in shows. Well, that's an interesting one. So yeah, first of all, we're not doing mostly live shows, unfortunately. So how do you do a call-in if it's not live? Second of all, how do you do a call-in if there's no phone? You could do it theoretically with your own personal cell phone if you're willing to give out the number to the public. But how do you do it if you're in the middle of broadcasting and somebody calls up? You need a producer. You need someone to answer the phone in a different space, right? And then, find out what they want and then patch them through into the studio to do the live call-in. So there's a bunch of logistical challenges. And then there's another one, which is we can't swear on our airwaves because of FCC rules, right? So no matter who it is calling, they may very well throw in a swear word and we could potentially lose our license. So the way WFPL or other stations that have the money prevent that from happening is with what's called the delay. So it's not actually live. It's a few seconds, usually like 15, 20 seconds delayed. So it's all like digitally processed before it's broadcast, and like the engineers can dump some of that audio if they have someone swearing on the air, that kind of thing. We don't have that technology. So so call-ins are really not going to work for us, unfortunately. So what we can do and what we will do during our pledge drive coming up, March 27th through April 9th, is do some live broadcasting here in the studio and get feedback from the listeners virtually, right? So like right now, I can read what Jackie Green wrote. If I was live on air, I could read it out on the air, that kind of thing. So during the pledge drive, we'd love to do that. We'd love to hear from our listeners who are making a contribution, whether it's $10 or $100, and we'll be using an online platform to make those contributions. And you could put in little comments or shout outs. You could do it in honor of somebody or whatever you want, and we will thank you live on the air and be able to share those messages with the community. So that's the way that can work. And then, like I said, some broadcasters are doing like Facebook Live of their show. And so they're getting interaction through Facebook, like messages again. But unfortunately, we can't do an actual call in. Would be cool. You also need tons of listeners to make a call in work. Like if your format is whatever people will want to call up and say we'll cover, if that's what you're doing and you don't have, hundreds of thousands of listeners at any given moment, it can be tough to sustain that, right? So we honestly probably don't have enough listeners to really make a consistent call-in show work, unfortunately.
Justin, I have a question or more of a thought. So I know with the LSC, we have a number, and it's
this rainbow. Can you see this rainbow? Are you looking outside? You probably can't see it.
I don't see it.
Ah, damn. It's beautiful. We've got great views from up here in the Heyburn Building.
You really do.
Go ahead. I'll just look at the rainbow.
The LSC has a Google number that people can call and leave voicemails, and we can get on our computer. Would you guys ever do something where people can call in, ask a question? You can then stream that and answer it live?
Yeah, I mean, we've thought about that kind of thing. Usually, though, the internet works for those kinds of interactions. So we have a new show about pets called Sit, Stay, Listen, which is all about like answering listeners' questions about their pets. Why does my dog do this? Or how could I get my cat to not do that? With Kate Sale, who's from the Kentucky Humane Society and a professional pet trainer. So what she does is she puts out her contact information, basically like contact us through our Facebook page, or I don't know what other social media she has. And so she'll collect questions throughout the week that then she can respond to on her show that week.
I have a comment and a question. My name is Nicole. I work at Kentucky Natural Lands Trust. And so my comment is that we would probably love to do something with you guys. And I might convince our executive director to go on the radio. I don't know if he has ever done that before.
Fun.
Also, I'm a community or a college radio DJ of the past.
Yay.
So in Springfield, Ohio, 89.1, it was amazing. So y'all are making me so jealous to like doing a radio broadcast. My show was on Tuesday nights at 10 o'clock. So I had a ton of listeners. But my question is and I don't know if you can share this, but what is your annual budget, or what do you all hope to raise during the pledge drive that's coming up?
Thank you for asking that. That's awesome. Yeah. So I don't know the total annual, but we could do the math in our head because we've figured out that it costs just around $20 an hour to run the station. And it's able to be that cheap because we don't pay anybody anything. So it's all volunteer. So literally that's only covering our rent, utilities, our license fees, and occasional equipment upgrades. Like we just bought a battery backup for our power so that we don't get knocked off our live stream again, that kind of thing. So yeah, about $20 an hour. I'm sorry, a day. Did I say hour? $20 a day. I was thinking of WRT where it is. It's like $35 an hour there because they have staff. So yeah, $20 a day is all it takes to keep the station on air. And so our goal for the pledge drive coming up for a 2-week pledge drive is to raise $5,000. And we could totally do that with your help. So we will have, the neat thing about the pledge drive is not only will we get thanked live over the air, but we'll have some great thank you gifts. We're assembling a bunch of wonderful premiums, including Ford Radio t-shirts and hoodies and things like that, but even some really nice art and some lovely things by Stitch. You want to talk about Stitch, Ruth?
Sure. Stitch is an organization that works with refugee women, and it's an acronym. It stands for Sewing Together in the Compassionate Highlands. And these are refugee women who get together late, and they each get their own sewing machine. That's what the organization does for them. And they have come up with some utterly gorgeous, gorgeous items that we will be having on during our pledge drive. We will be offering for various premium levels.
And then all the money goes directly to the refugees. So
yes.
So we'll be, if you choose a Stitch item, you'll be helping Forward Radio and the refugees community, which is awesome.
Yeah, I can. They're going to have beautiful pillows with derby motifs made of ultra suede fabric. They're going to have something called kitchen boas.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Which is a scarf that is worn around your neck. And there is a beautifully designed kitchen towel on each end. So you can have it around your neck when you're in the kitchen doing the dishes or cooking, and use it to wipe the counter or whatever. And they also receive some donated fabric from countries all over the world. And they are making tote bags and purses out of this fabric. And we have photos of them. What is it, on our Facebook page at the moment?
Yes, you can find us on Facebook right now, and you could see these awesome premiums and get ready to donate. We'll have our Indiegogo site up fairly soon, and you'll be able to see the premium levels and things like that. So yeah, this will be a great time of year to donate to the station, but we need support throughout the year too. And again, it's $20 a day. Like, we can totally, it's amazing. We can totally make this happen. And we have for 4 years running. So, and then the last thing we want to mention, it's not too late to sign up to participate in our talent show. So to recognize our 4th birthday, we're going to have a virtual talent show for the community. And it's a little fundraiser for us. So we're asking for $10 donations to watch the talent show, but we're still accepting for another few days anyone who wants to apply for the talent show, whether you want to sing better than I can in Guarani, or it doesn't have to be music. It could be anything. No limit to your creativity. Juggling, tricks, comedy, theater, poetry. Maybe you've got some poetry you want to share. Anything.
Cute pet tricks.
Cute pet tricks. You got a pet you want to highlight, and there'll be a $100 cash prize for the winner.
And don't shy away from being an audience. We need an audience for this talent show. It's only $10. And not only that, you get to vote for your favorite performer.
That's right. This audience award is going to win it. It's like America's Got Talent or something. I don't even watch TV. What am I talking about? But it's going to be on Saturday, April 10th at 7 p.m. So mark your calendars and plan to join us. And you can go to fordradio.org to get tickets now, or to sign up if you want to participate as a performer. We're really excited about that.
I just dropped the Stitch link, Ford Radio's Facebook link, and the link to apply for the talent show. So click and just have it all up on your screen for when this exits out. That sounds really cool. And I know, gosh, I just looked at the clock and I can't believe it's 7 o'clock already. But to wrap it up, I have one more question for you.
Yes.
So in what ways can local businesses and organizations support you in the station?
Yeah, so glad you asked that. I mean, I did mention it briefly, but we would love to help sustain this station through not just individual contributions, but nonprofits or local businesses. If you run Walmart, we don't want to hear from you. We're not interested in that. But hey, a local business who wanted to support us, we'd love to have you. So you could be an underwriter of the station or a nonprofit community partner of the station. I don't remember the underwriter levels because we don't deal with it very much, but I just revised the the community partner agreement, and you can donate a range of $150 a year or up to $500 a year. And how much you donate will determine how many times a day your 30-second promotional announcement will be heard. So the script for your 30-second promo could be, pretty much whatever you want, and we'll work with you on producing it. So that's a great way to get your name out in the community about your organization in general, or if you have a big event or a program that you really want to highlight in particular, we can also work with you to concentrate those announcements in like the weeks leading up to your event or that kind of thing. So yeah, consider going to forwardradio.org and becoming a community partner of ours. If you've got an organization, you'll notice our community partners right now, these are little bitty organizations like Sustainable Agriculture of Louisville, like Bicycling for Louisville, like these tiny little organizations. They're not sitting on huge endowments, right? So that is the kind of little grassroots community power that can sustain us. It doesn't have to be like the mega bucks kind of people making this radio station, this community treasure happen. So please consider joining us and becoming one of our sponsors.
Absolutely. Man, this was really cool. The LSC has been in the station a couple of times, and it's always such a blast, and time flies there too.
Yeah.
And I just feel like community radio is such a pillar in the community. So we're really thankful for all that you're doing. And Ruth, this is such a cool endeavor that you got started. So we're stoked to see that you guys are still going strong. And thank you for being here with us.
Yay!
Thank you.
Always
Thanks
a
for
pleasure.
having us.
Well, it's 7:01, so I know we went over a little bit. One more time, I'm dropping LSC's Facebook link in the chat box. That's the best way to stay up to date on us and all that we're doing. I will not be here the next Green Drink, maybe 2. I will miss you all, but Tyler Higdon will be here running the show. So be kind to him, as I'm sure you will be. And we look forward to seeing everybody next time. So chug those green drinks, enjoy the sunshine.
The rainbow
coming in. Yes, get out. I'm going to try and find that rainbow if it's still there.
Look east. It's amazing.
That sounds great. Well, everyone, enjoy your St. Patrick's Day. Happy Wednesday.
Find the pot of gold.
Yes, find your pot of gold.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.